Welcome to the Precision Health Pod, where we talk to the people building and experiencing the future of health. Today, we want to welcome Josh from Future. Future is a company that makes personal training much more accessible, where anyone can train with some of the world's greatest personal trainers, really from anywhere, at home, at the gym, or on the go. And collectively, they've raised over 110 million to date, with some of the top investors and funds and angel investors like Kate Hudson, Rory McIlroy, and JJ Watt. Welcome, Josh. We're happy to have you.
Thanks, Rachel. I'm super excited to have this chat with you today, and it's been really fun and kind of inspiring getting to know you over the last year as well, and everything that you're building with Rootine and everything that you're doing to kind of bring our human performance space together. So I'm excited.
Well, yeah, thank you so much. I think we're both looking to help make people healthier through technology and using a lot of different ways to get there. Future on the fitness side, Rootine on the nutrition side, and really tying that together for the whole market. But yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about you. How did you get to where you are today, and what really inspired it?
Sure. So I kind of have a long-winded and a little bit of a roundabout story to how I landed, where I am today. So I'll try to kind of give the Cliff Notes version a little bit, but then I'm happy to dive deeper into any of it. But, basically for me, growing up, I was that annoying little kid, probably like many of us, where I was very into sports. And so you couldn't tell me any different if people asked me what I was going to do, when I grow up. I was going to play for the Bulls. And, I grew up an hour and a half north of Chicago. My childhood was right in the heart of the dynasty years, the Jordan years. And so that was my whole life. My whole life revolved around, if I wasn't watching basketball, I was playing basketball, and everything for me was about how could I get better as a basketball player to kind of make this dream come true. Now, unbeknownst to me, but everybody else around me, I wasn't very good at basketball. So I was more stubborn than I was talented. But I think the good thing was, along the way, I fell in love with the process of how do you become a better athlete? How do you get in better shape, get stronger, be healthier, recover, stuff like that. Now I'm in middle school, high school, so I had no clue what I was doing. Looking back, I was spending a ton of time doing all the wrong things, but my sort of heart was in the right place. But I think it was probably around late high school where I realized I was like, I should come up with a backup plan, like just in case I don't play for the Bulls. Because in my mind, I still was going to, even though I was starting to figure out I wasn't that good. And so this is late 90s, early 2000s. And that's around the time when I realized, like, wow, I could be, a strength and conditioning coach, sport performance coach. And that's another way in. And so what I did from there was I basically looked at who are the people in positions that I would aspire to get to one day. And, in particular, how do I end up with the Bulls? And, kind of looked at their paths and the commonalities, the outliers, and studied it and, tried to follow that because, and I always say success leaves clues. And, so I think I was fortunate because already by my senior year of high school and throughout college, I was starting to take those steps, like reaching out to people who were in positions, that I wanted to get to and learning from them and just doing any type of opportunity I could. And fast forward, that led to actually my very first opportunity out of college. I started with the Bulls. I started out as an intern, literally like, I think it was the week after I graduated, I started my internship. And what is kind of like my big full circle moment that I love to tell is when I was in third grade, my third grade teacher did this like time capsule assignment with us. So it was like, write a letter to your future self. I think it was like 15 years in the future or something like that. What will you be doing? And I have no idea how she did it, but I got that letter in the mail when I was in like it was my first month. It was probably my first or second week starting with the Bulls. And I was commuting from home in Wisconsin every day. So I came home, got this letter, opened it up. I had no idea what it was. And it was that letter from my third grade self. And it was just one line: I will be the starting point guard for the Chicago Bulls. And so that was like my moment. It was like, I'm not playing point, but like I'm there. I found another way in. And I think that realization too was big for me in that moment, because up until that point, I sort of always set in my head, like, by the time I'm 35, I'll be able to, be either a head NBA or high major college basketball strength coach, and really like work for the Bulls. That was my ultimate. And so now here I am, I'm 22, and I don't care that I'm unpaid as an intern. That was my dream job. Like I had made it. And so what was great about that was it forced me already at 22 to rethink sort of the vision and realize, hang on now, if that's all I set for myself at like 35, I've set the bar, quite low. And so, it led me down this path where I was able to, by just kind of how I showed up each day in my internship, I was able to leverage that into a full-time role a year later. So then they brought me on as an assistant strength coach. I spent 3 more years, so 4 years in total with the Bulls. And that's really where I got my start at the end of my 4th year. And we'd had a lot of success. That was the year Derrick Rose won MVP. We had the best record in the NBA. Really good team. I got recommended to take over the men's basketball program at Purdue University. So I ended up leaving there. It was an opportunity the Bulls to Purdue to build my own program and really like shape something. And so, ended up spending 7 years there at Purdue. And it was really a fortunate opportunity, because where my mind was going at the time was, well, why couldn't I be a high performance director in the NBA or college and kind of own every aspect, not just strength and conditioning, but, everything as it relates to nutrition and mental performance and skill development and sports science and all these pieces that tie in where, you're not the one in charge of it, but you kind of oversee, you hire those people, you help facilitate how they communicate with one another and empower them. And so at Purdue, in a lot of ways, I was able to kind of scratch that itch, where we were doing a lot of things before any other basketball teams, even in the NBA, with some of the, technology that we're bringing in and stuff like that. And so that led me to kind of my next, jump or realization of, well, I want to find something that gives me a platform to really like help many more people. I realized through, altogether, I guess 11 years between the Bulls and Purdue, every assistant I ever had at Purdue, every intern that was ever with us at the Bulls or Purdue went on to become a head strength coach. And so I realized, I was like, I want a platform to be able to do that at a bigger level. And so I thought, again, kind of zooming out, 15 years from now, why couldn't I be the general manager of an NBA team and like build the whole thing, not just performance, but everything. And so I went back to, my high school days of like, okay, who are the people in positions that I want to get to, that I look up to? And I looked at, Bob Myers with the Warriors and Theo Epstein with the Cubs and the Red Sox. And the thing that stood out to me was they both had their JD. And because I knew, like, I'm not going to go from being a performance director to a GM. There's not like a straight line path there. I was like, well, if I get my JD, and what Theo had done, when he got his start, he was like bottom of the totem pole, operations assistant with the Padres, but he was going to law school at night. So he ended up, 4 years later, got his JD. Year after that, he's the GM of the Red Sox, and, rest is history. And so that was my path. That was the platform I thought to, empower more people. And then out of nowhere, as I'm like starting to get my law school acceptance letters back, and I had it lined up wherever I went to law school, I was going to be able to work in the front office for that team in that city, just off my, past relationships. And then I get this email out of nowhere, and I thought it was like I'm being catfished or something, because it was our founding COO at the time. And he was like, hey, like, we have this all-star team of founders. Our founding COO was the first ever employee at DoorDash, ran ops, from when there were 8 people in a garage to like 30,000 employees when you include all the dashers. Our CEO, Rishi, was a astrophysicist by trade, worked for NASA, like did just crazy impressive stuff, had already built a company that had been acquired. And then our CTO, Justin, was part of the first ever iPhone team, built the first iPhone. And he invented FaceTime and iMessage himself. And it was, his teams that iterated on that. So it was like, here's our team, here's our idea. We want to basically build preventative healthcare. And our solution is to do what, professional athletes have, which is pair you with a coach who's in your life with you every single day. And we think you should come help us do this. So naturally, like, my first instinct was like, there is no way this is real. Also, it's 2018. I'm living in West Lafayette, Indiana. So I didn't know if DoorDash was a real company. Turns out, fast forward, it's a very real company. But, all that stuff meant nothing to me. But I think I was fortunate because my decision-making circle was a lot of close friends I'd made in my time in Chicago, who all have gone on to be very successful in the tech and startup world. So I had a unique set of counsel to help me understand that this was in fact a very real opportunity. And they all told me, they were like, you have to do this. And so I, kind of followed up to that email, spent a couple months getting to know those guys and what my role would be with it all, and pretty quickly realized everything I thought I was going to get from going to law school, it was like this opportunity was going to be that on steroids. And everyone kind of, the thing that was consistent that everyone said was, in 1 year, expect that this will fail. There's no maybe, there's no probably, like 100% it will fail. Either you don't, because we had just raised seed. So either you burn through your runway and you don't raise your next round, or they said, you just hate it. You absolutely hate it. One of those two things, if not both, is a certainty. And with that in mind, you absolutely have to do this, because in that 1 year, you'll grow 5 years professionally. And so kind of, took the leap, because it was also the other part of it. It was like, well, what if it doesn't fail, And so that was 4.5 years ago now, and fast forward, here we are. So
yeah. That's such an impressive career and so interesting on so many levels. And it's you really think about, and when you talk to high performing people, which you are, you coach high performance, but you also are a high performing person. The fact that you kind of set that goal in 3rd grade and you're like, this is what I'm going to do. Maybe it's not exactly what that is, but there's so many people. I have similar things. I said, and I told my parents I was going to be an investment banker when I was 12 and going to Harvard Business School when I was 15. I had no idea what either of those meant, but lo and behold, I did both. And it's kind of fun to see where people are now, what they said they were going to do. Obviously things change, but it's having those goals and working towards them and figuring out how to get to them. That's also what makes early stage startup employees so impressive, and probably why you've been as successful as you have at Future, but also enjoyed it and kind of accelerated and excelled in that role. So you went from coaching pro athletes, college athletes, and now you're working with everyday high performers, the best across startups, venture, finance, Hollywood. How does that differ? Like, what's the difference in training those people, or does it?
I think at the core of it really doesn't differ. And I think honestly, like, this speaks to the core of what your business is as well with Rootine, is like, there's I think you're starting from the same initial foundation, which is understanding who this person is in front of you and meeting them where they're at. And so like what you all do with Rootine is you do all these intakes and these different markers and, blood testing and DNA and lifestyle and all of that. And the reason you do that is to understand who this person is, what their needs are, what their deficiencies are, what, maybe they have way too much of, and we need to, bring that down. And it doesn't matter if that person is, LeBron James or Tom Brady or somebody crazy like that, or it's someone who like their nutrition has been out of whack for the last 20 years and they're trying to get started. But I think we get caught up in like the outward, maybe appearance or accolades, accomplishments of whoever is in front of us. And we think, oh, well, so same thing for coaching and training. Well, if I'm working with, LeBron James, Derrick Rose, whoever, I have to approach them very differently than if I work with someone who they're just trying to start working out for the first time, or they haven't worked out in 10 years and now they're trying to get back to it. But when you break it down, you're starting from the same place, which is, ultimately, one, just like being curious, like asking a lot of questions, having an active interest about who this person is, where they are, where they've been, where they want to go. And at its core, that's what coaching is. The sort of origin of that word coach dates back to like, stagecoach. A stagecoach is a means of transportation. And so what a coach is and where that word originated is a coach is someone who transports you from where you are to where you want to go. And so at the core, that's where you start with everyone and all of those different things of, LeBron James plays basketball and he's at a high level and he's been playing for 18 years and his strength is this, his fitness is this, versus someone else who, they're trying to lose 50 pounds and they haven't worked out in 10 years. That's all part of the intake. And then that tells me, or that helps inform me to go, okay, where do I need to start with this person to meet them where they are? But at the core of it within coaching, it's all relationships. So even before we get into, and it's sort of happening in parallel a lot, but like, if you think about it like a pyramid of, as I progress you and advance you, in theory, like you're moving up the pyramid because you're becoming fitter and then you're becoming stronger and then you're becoming faster, and so on. Is everyone's kind of starting at maybe a different place along that pyramid or rungs of a ladder, but the base of it, what shapes that pyramid is the relationship that I as a coach have with this person in front of me. And that's critical because there has to be trust. I can have all the knowledge, all the expertise in the world. I can have the perfect plan and perfect path laid out for you. But if we don't have a relationship, if you don't trust me, if you don't, kind of get the vibe from me that I genuinely care about you. And in fact, I care about you and your success even ahead of me and like how your success or failure might make me look. Without that, it doesn't matter, what I know. And so, I think sometimes we can get in our own way, like talking about, if I'm a high level coach or sports scientist or, expert in whatever my domain is, we can get so locked into like the science of everything and the physiology and the textbook and this and that we lose sight of this is a real person in front of me. And there's so many more variables to it where, some days you kind of throw the science out the window to just like support someone, or, I'll do workouts at times, even with some of our elite athletes, where if you walked in and saw what we were doing, you'd be like, Josh is an idiot that knows nothing about training. But what you don't realize is we just came off of losing 4 games in 5 nights. This guy's, girlfriend just broke up with him and he's just super down right now. He's all that. And so like, all I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get him from the time he walked in to see me in the weight room, where he's walking in slow, he's kind of irritable, his head's down, whatever, to the time he leaves, that he's laughing, he's jovial, he has energy, and he's walking tall, and he, kind of has a swagger to him. And so there's things there where you're even doing where it's like within it all, you're playing with music, you're getting them to laugh, and that all comes at the core of having that relationship to understand, beyond just where are we starting, but throughout the ebbs and flows of it, what does this person need in this moment?
Definitely. It's really a personalized approach, regardless of if you're an elite athlete or, as you said, someone starting working out again for the next 10 years. And those ebbs and flows are just human, right? So even a professional athlete is going to have bad days. A normal person is going to have bad days, and making sure that you're kind of there supporting them, but also creating a plan and then continuing to optimize that plan over time, because the intake is just one piece of it. It's all right, what's happening in a week? What's happening in 2 weeks? Okay, things maybe aren't going according to plan. So how do we need to adjust based on kind of all of the metrics that we have in front of us? And that's one of the things that's really exciting about overall the future of health, is you can use technology to make that a lot more accessible for people, because this like really personalized approach to coaching, or personalized approach to nutrition or other health is very expensive if you have individuals running all of it. But when you add technology, it makes it more accessible, which is what you guys are doing at Future as well. And what are some of the lessons along the way? You go from 0 to 110 million raised in 4.5 years. Obviously you did some learning. So what were the learnings? What were the mistakes? Any surprises along the way with the journey?
Man, that's as you know, as you're going through it yourself, that's it's a really loaded question. I think the big overarching thing is just keep showing up, honestly, and that's something that you'll hear me talk about all the time. It's probably one of my like life mantras, is showing up is a skill. And I really believe that the ability to, no matter what's going on around you, no matter how frustrated you are, no matter, how much you're failing or just, struggling or whatever it is, the ability to set all that aside and still just show up the next day. Like, and many days in the startup world, and especially in the early startup journey, and I'm sure you can attest to this as well, is you have those moments of doubt, and those moments turn into like months of doubt, and you have those moments of like, what the heck am I doing? And this is really hard. And like, especially for me, I'd sort of built, kind of climbed the mountaintop in one profession. And so you sort of have that safety net, and in the back of your mind, you're kind of like, well, I could just go back. And like, I know I'm really good at that thing, and I could, get a job that I can kind of just be on autopilot. I don't have to think, and it would be comfortable. And so it's like setting all of those things aside. And, cause like the other thing is, life will give you every excuse every single day to not show up. And so that's, I think that's the first step of like, and as I've been in it with, professional athletes who've, been all-stars, been, Derek was the MVP my last year. I've trained Olympians, a gold medalist, and now these entrepreneurs. I think that's the thing that stands apart. Like, sure, some of them have unique talents and abilities, or are just like, someone like Rishi, our CEO, is maybe the smartest human being I've ever met. Like the dude's literally a rocket scientist. But by and large, the through line is just like, at points where like 99% of people would have, and kind of rightfully so, said, man, like, this is just, I can't do it anymore. It's not worth it. I'm done. They kept showing up. And there's a quote that I heard recently from, did a podcast with, oh gosh, I'm blanking on his last name, Hugh. But he started a really cool organization called Global Citizen. In fact, recently they raised, I think it was 8 billion for the fight in Ukraine. Like he's done just insane stuff. And he said something that stuck with me, which is when things seem the hardest, push forward one day more, and I think that's been, it's kind of how I've always been, but I think that piece had to come through so much more to like make it in this startup journey, because you're starting out. And for us, it was 8 of us in a basement, and I moved, my family, it's my wife, and we have a dog that's basically our daughter at this point. But we moved from the Midwest to San Francisco. We don't know anyone. Our families are on the other side of the country. And it was really hard. And everyone, again, going back, everyone saying before I took the opportunity that this will fail in 1 year. They also said, you'll be the most miserable you've been probably ever in your entire life. Like, this will be the hardest thing that you ever do in your life. With that said, you absolutely have to do it, And so I think, like, yes, that helped, like kind of knowing that going into it. But as you've experienced, no doubt, when you're actually in it, like, that's a very different thing. Even if you know to expect that, like, you're still going through it every day, where, like, I'm coming home most days of the week, and like my wife is crying because she's miserable. She hates it in San Francisco. She hasn't adjusted. I'm crying because, like, I suck at everything. I'm failing at it. Because I think that's the other thing for like high performers. And I know this about you as well from our conversations, is like, it turns out you're actually doing like a whole bunch of stuff really, really well, and probably at a higher level than most people, could. But you're a high performer for a reason. So you're like, yeah, like, I should do all of that. Like anybody could do that. And so you focus in on, but like this, and this are all falling apart, and it's all my fault, And so I think that's a big thing, is just like, and a big lesson for me has been, I have no idea how I'm going to fix this thing, put out this fire, solve this thing that's like literally about to, if I don't solve this from my side, because you're in that moment, like, our company is going to fail. Like, I had a moment, I think it was maybe my 3rd week, where, like, if I didn't solve this thing within the next like 4 or 5 days, we don't make it to our Series A, and there's a number of moments like that where you're like, I have no idea how I'm going to do this, but like, if I don't, we die. So I just have to figure it out. And you do that by, showing up.
It's so true. There's so much you can rationally understand what you're getting into, but when you're physically in it and just mentally experiencing it and your body's experiencing it, it's just a very different it's a very different thing. It also means that the highs are very different than rationally what you could possibly imagine as well. But as I always say, like, the biggest advice I have for founders is, before you start, look at yourself. Can you live in uncertainty, and can you figure out
Yeah.
a way to mentally, like, level out the highs and the lows?
Hmm.
Because if you can't, you will drive yourself crazy. Because
Yeah.
yeah, there's
Yeah.
always something, at least once a day, if not once a week, that the company is going to die if we don't do XYZ. Sometimes that's real. A lot of times it's not, but it's still
Yeah.
really hard, both mentally and physically. And with that, obviously, being a founder, being an early stage part of a company, it takes a toll on you. How
Hmm.
do you stay healthy physically, mentally? You're a coach, but how do you, as a coach, stay on top of your game?
Yeah. And that was quite a journey as well, I think, which is sort of related to the piece of showing up. I think the piece that I was not ready for, I didn't realize, and this was naive of me, is everywhere I'd been previously, whether it was the Bulls and starting as an intern, and leveraging that into becoming, an assistant, and then putting myself in position to go to Purdue. And, especially going to Purdue, that was really hard at first, because it was my first program that I was in charge of. It was, they had nothing before I got there. So it was a lot of work. Guys didn't, our players at Purdue, they didn't have a culture where like they trained or they believed in training. They would all go home in the summer, which is like unheard of in college basketball. But, so there are a lot of things like that. But with each of those experiences, it was really, really hard at first. And then over time, you sort of figure it out and it gets easier. And so I think I went into it with Future and especially everyone saying, this will be the hardest year of your life, yada, yada. I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. Like I've been through this before. I know that, like, literally I know nothing in this world. But it's going to be really hard at first, and then I'll like figure it out, and then it'll get easy. And I just like, I kept waiting for this moment where it did get easy, and that never happened. Like I would have flashes of it. Like I would have flashes where I'm like, man, like I would get something done where I'm like, man, I'm like figuring this thing out. I'm really like, I'm pretty dang good at this. And literally 10 minutes later, I just get knocked on my ass. And, a lot of it was, I think Rishi in particular did a phenomenal job of always leveling me up. Like he literally never let me get comfortable. So once he saw that I had like developed a new skill or ability, he'd kind of bring me in and was like, okay, time to level up. And you're sort of like, no, like I'm good right here. Like I'm starting to figure this out. And so I think that really took a big toll on me, because especially in the early days, the first, call it 3 months or so, um, you're fighting for survival. So the thing that people had said to me, and I know you have the same, you do not found a company without this mindset, is everyone is saying, hey, this thing's going to fail in 1 year. Well, that's not an option. I just gave up my whole life to do this thing. It is not going to fail. And so within that, I was working from the time I woke up, which most days was like 5 or 6 a.m. Like literally from that moment, I would grab my phone. I had clients, myself. So I have clients in New York who've just finished a workout because it's 9 a.m. their time, and I'm messaging them right away. I'm doing emails, and I was doing that. I wouldn't leave the office until, it'd be close to midnight most every day. I had my walk home mapped out where like I knew what like bar restaurants serve food until like 1 or 1:30, and I would stop at one along the way, order food, pull my computer back out, and I'm doing emails. And so it took me probably a year to learn and understand that this will never get easier. It will only ever get harder, because the more success you have, the bigger your opportunity becomes. And, you earn the right to level up. And so what I had to learn was I just got a lot better at dealing with it, at managing it all. And it's kind of, and one of my buddies, Sahil, talks about like the Eisenhower decision matrix. And that was a big one that I had to learn, was like, not everything is urgent, and so starting to realize, because you're getting email, like I'm getting emails at, 3 a.m. from my co-founders about stuff that's on fire, stuff that I've screwed up, whatever it is. And I would let that ruin like my weekend or my nights, and oftentimes you find that it's already happened. There's nothing you can do about it now. Just make sure it doesn't happen again, or it can wait till Monday. Or like that fire gets actually put out and resolved before you ever even come into the equation. So I think one thing for me was like shutting off. I learned to, when I left one thing was I learned to say, I've done all I can do today. And that was a big one for me, because, one of my colleagues had said this to me one day. He'd see me in the office always super late. He'd always leave, before me. And he came and sat by me one day and he was like, Josh, the work's going to be here still tomorrow. And no matter how much you get done today, there's always going to be more. And that stuck with me. So I learned to like, I've done all I can do today, and I'll get to the rest tomorrow. But then when I left, I did not look at Slack, did not look at email until the next morning whenever I left my apartment. And you find that even if there is if there's a true fire, somebody's going to call me. But the rest of it, it turns out it's not that, big of a deal. And so I think that was the biggest piece for me, was starting to be able to step back there. Now what kind of happened along the way, and I think, and I'll pause after this, but I think we can go into it more if it's interesting, is in that first year in particular, and really almost on out to my second year, I was so focused on just, we have to survive, that the thing that was always my rock my whole career and my whole life really was like working out. Like my whole life, I always had that under control. Now I was like, I don't have time. I can't do it. It's not important. And like I rationalized, I'm like, I don't even care anyways. I'm getting older. It's just frustrating when I go lift because I'm weaker than I was when I was, 22. I'm not as fast. I can't jump as high, And so I'd make all these excuses for why it was okay that I just didn't work out. But then I started to have an awareness that, not only obviously was that just bad for my personal health, and you sort of renorm to it, unfortunately, but I started to realize like, I'm not sharp when I show up, like when I present, and I'm like trying to like, be articulate and intelligent or like solve problems. Like I'm getting stuck. I'm like, I think people call it brain fog. I don't know that was what I was going through, but I'm like, man, I'm not as sharp as I normally am. And so, that's been a big thing now for me since that realization. I just realized, I was like, for me, I can't just like say, okay, I'm going to get back to like lifting and whatever 4 days a week. So I made a decision. This was, I think it was like February 1st, 2020. And I was like, screw it. I'm just going to work out every single day, because that way I can never say I'll do it tomorrow. And so I started that, actually, I think technically it's February 2nd. And I haven't missed a day since. But what I think has come from that is it's more of a virtuous cycle of like, you're more intentional about, making sure that you have good hygiene around your sleep, and good sleep habits, and you're eating better, and, hopefully cutting down on alcohol and things like that. So
Yeah, I'm a strong believer in that kind of the generation of startups that you saw from like the 2000s to kind of generation before us, right? Have this kind of idealized, you never sleep, you always eat like crap, you work 24/7. It doesn't work. You can't, as you talk about, you can't show up every day, whether it's at work, at home, if you're a parent, with your family, with your friends, unless you're taking care of yourself in at least some capacity. And that means, like you said, paying attention to your sleep, making sure you're eating well, making sure you're getting the right supplements if you need them, making sure you're working out or exercising or moving or just doing something on that side. And also thinking about your mental health. So what are the boundaries that you're putting up? Obviously, startup life is very different. Like there's always fires to be put out, but do you have the ability to say, hey, I'm actually just not looking at my phone for the next 24 hours, or I'm taking a vacation, I'm taking a day off, figure it out. Kind of once people figure that out, and it's exciting to see this next generation of founders really paying attention to that and building companies around it, right? Like they're not only doing it themselves, but they're building ways for other people to do it too. It's just really, it's an exciting change in the way that the world's kind of working, at least in the consumer health or in the health space. But yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about this. Like I've worked out every day for, I think it's 1,000+ days or almost 1,000 days.
I'm getting there. Today will be right after this actually will be day 928 today. So
how have you done that? And has it changed obviously you made a decision. You said, hey, I need to work out every day because I can't just do it occasionally, and I need to do it to
Mhm.
show up. But have you learned anything else kind of about yourself or your ability to handle challenges or diversity and going on this goal that most people either would never attempt or could never do?
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of it, honestly, for me has been, it's a mindset thing where, I think there's an element of like, one, no matter what your excuse is, like just get it done. Like find a way. Like, and there's always a way, and there's always a solution, and there's always something, that you can do. So it's two, like no matter how hard it gets, you're still doing it. It's, I think it's freeing a little bit, is like I don't have like there's not a decision to make of like, I should work out, but I don't know. I don't have a decision because I have to do it today because I'm also doing it tomorrow. And, I didn't start this going like, man, I'm going to work out for a year straight. I'm going to work out for 1,000. I'm going to work like, I started it by literally just going like, I'm going to work out today, and then I'm just going to work out the day after that and the day. But I started with today. Another thing, that for most people, I think we get in our own ways because we start to make it like this bigger thing than it is. We start to make it this like all or nothing proposition. And, especially someone like myself coming from a background of like being a high level coach and all these sorts of things, it's like, I had periods of my life where I would train an hour to 2 hours every single day. And so, I think a lot of times people get caught up in this idea of like, there has to be like, it must be an hour. And like, I don't have time for an hour. But you don't need to. Like, it can be, for me, I kind of set the sort of barrier around like 15 minutes, and so it's like every single day I'm getting at least 15 minutes. But if I start and I feel pretty good that day, and maybe I have more time that day or whatever it is, then I will go longer. Like I'll have days where I'm like, man, I feel really good, so I'll do a 2 a day. Like I'll do, some type of lift in the morning, and then let me go for a run in the afternoon. And so, I think that's been a big piece, the mindset piece. And then, because one of the questions I always get, and even like honestly, like uh, almost like criticism, is people don't believe that that's healthy. Like that's not healthy. You'll overtrain, you'll burn out. Like I think we've like overhyped like physical burn, like even with athletes, the athletes who go through like true overtraining are like extreme endurance athletes. It's like it's marathoners, it's ultra marathoners, it's Ironman type athletes. Like there's like an extremeness that needs to occur for like true overtraining. Most of us don't like train at near the level for that to occur. But the other thing is, yes, like you'll burn out and you'll overtrain if you just do the same exact thing every single day. And a lot of it is, it's not even the physiological stress. It's, and this is literally a term related to overtraining, is monotony. It's monotony. And part of that monotony is it's just the same thing over and over and over. And so that's why you see with, say like in basketball, high school basketball players that like play AU and all this, if that's all they do year round, then like, yeah, they start to break down. But if you start to understand, one, to kind of listen to your body and auto regulate, like adapt based on where you are that day and how you feel, and then manipulate the load. You don't necessarily need to like remove load or intensity or frequency, but you can manipulate it. So again, some days if I feel great, like I'll push it. It'll be higher intensity stuff, maybe even longer duration. Other days it'll be, more of a flush. And I think even just that mindset, it carries into, some of the challenges you face in your day to day of like, you realize there's always a way, there's always a solution. And kind of part of that whole streak, which is actually for me an even longer streak, is every Wednesday and every Sunday now for over 5 years, I've run 10 hills, no matter where. And I've been like international. I've been in Alaska. I've been like on the like on a cross country road trip. When Wednesday or Sunday occurs, I've literally never missed, not once in over 5 years. And again, it's the mindset. It's like there's a combination. Some days there's weather, so it's like pouring rain. Cool. I'll adjust for the elements. I'll throw on a rain jacket. Pull my hood tight, and I'm just going to deal with it. I'm going to be the only one out there and I'm going to get it done. Or, it's really cold out. Cool. I'll layer up and I'll go get it. Or sometimes I'm somewhere where it's like, there's not even a hill. Like, even if I wanted to find one, cool. There's a set of stairs. I will run it 100 times because that actually works out to be about like the same sort of stress as what my normal 10 hills are. Or I'll get a treadmill and set you know what I mean? And it's like, even just that mindset, I think has carried me forward quite a lot. But it's, I think the big piece of it too is like, and I listen to a lot of David Goggins, especially when I run my hills, which, by the way, if you want like rocket fuel during, like, if you're doing a hard workout or whatever, just put that on and listen. And I mean, I love it. But he talks about like the 40% rule. And he was like, most of us live our lives never realizing what we're truly capable of. Cause we get to this point where it feels hard, or we tell ourselves, oh, this is crazy. And we never go beyond that. And, I think part of the problem is oftentimes we kind of let each other do that. We sort of like, and he talks about this too. Oh, it's okay, man. It's pouring rain out there. Why don't we just, let's go grab a beer and watch some football, and most of us like, cause that's what we want to hear. But being able to have that discipline, and then it becomes a habit, but to have that discipline to be like, yeah, like I'll go do that after, but like I have to get this done first, and I'm going to get this done. And I think there's something about it of like, I mean, so many, like when I go run this hill, even today, I will be the only one that's there. I'm the only one that's there. And there's a hill in my hometown that I run all the time. I had a lady that lives on the hill stop me. This was like a month ago. And she was like, I've lived here for 27 years. I have never seen anyone other than you run this hill. You know what I mean? And there's just like something about it for your mindset to know, like, I might not be more talented than people at things or smarter or whatever, but like I'm doing something no one else is willing to do. And there's a Will Smith quote that sticks with me. I first read it in the book Grit, and he said, he's basically like, you might be smarter than me, you might be prettier than me, faster than me, strong, like whatever. You might have it on me in 9 categories out of 10, but I know one thing for certain. If you and me get on the treadmill together, one of 2 things is going to happen. Either you're getting off first or I'm going to die. It's really that simple. And like, that's like my approach. Like, you might beat me, but like, I'm just going to keep coming until like you relent. So, I think that's been the biggest thing for me, is just that mindset piece.
That's so interesting and so true. Like, you can figure that out in one part of your life. It's just like, it's a mental kind of training your mentality, right? Like, it's training yourself to think about, all right, here's a brick wall. Like, how do I get through it? And then you start to think about all these various solutions. How do you figure it out? What's the first thing you test? What's the first thing you try? And you just get better at it, which is so important across the board. So I know we don't have a ton of time left, but just switching gears a little bit, another part of your life, venture partner, angel investor. What are you most excited about when it comes to the future of health?
Yeah. I think it's really an extension of everything that I've been learning and doing and building with Future, to now being a venture partner with TXV, which is growing the human performance space. I think from when I first started at Future, and the biggest reason probably I made the jump is just the solution made sense to me. It was like, we have this massive problem where it's, I think it's something like 80% of us will one day die of some type of chronic condition: obesity, diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, these sorts of things. And what you realize is those are nearly entirely preventable. There's something that we can do about it, but the problem is everything is set up to be reactionary. It's not until the point at which I become obese or I have diabetes or whatever condition where now we do something about it. And really, it's in a lot of ways it's too late at that point. And so even with Future, it was like the solution made sense to me. It was like, how can we build something? How can we build sort of this ecosystem and ultimately a constellation of experts around you to take a personalized approach with you of this like N=1 approach, which, as we talked about earlier, N=1 doesn't necessarily need to be this like highly, highly, highly scientific, complicated thing. A lot of it is just like, who are you? Like, what's going on in your life? And like, how do we, when you think about working out or better nutrition, how do we meet you where you are right now? So like nutrition, Derrick Rose, who I coached from his rookie year to his MVP year, when he came in as a rookie, the only thing he ate literally was candy. It was like Skittles. He loved those like sour gummy worms. It was, M&Ms, like candy bar. Like, I mean, he didn't even eat McDonald's. And so it was like, even with someone like him, who's like the youngest ever MVP in the NBA, the biggest thing that we did with him early on was like, okay, he only eats candy right now. Maybe we can get him to eat like McDonald's and Burger King, because is that good? No, but like it at least resembles kind of sort of real food, and then once we get there, maybe we can, and actually how he transitioned was, he'd start to tell me what he ate every day. And so he'd be like, Josh, for lunch yesterday, I had a salad, there was grilled chicken on it, there was, whatever from Burger King. And I was like, okay, like we're getting there. But it was a process where then by his MVP year, and he's someone of means, but this is what we're trying to build collectively, you, me, and many others in the human performance space, is he had the means then to recognize that, hang on, like me optimizing my nutrition is what allows me to like be Derrick Rose, like to be 100. Like, he's someone that's so gifted, especially in the NBA, that like he had been able to operate at 60 to 70% of who Derrick Rose is and Derrick Rose's capabilities. And he's just so far above and beyond everyone else that's his 60-70% is still just better. But he realized, like, hang on now, like, what if I can do this consistently throughout the game, every game, all season long. And so he hired his own chef, and he made, and so that is what I'm excited about in the human performance space, is finding, people like you and Rootine. And, you think about companies like Aura Ring or, Levels, or, there's companies building in the mindfulness meditation space, but thinking about, companies that are building in the space of how we move, how we eat, how we sleep, how we manage our stress, because those are the four critical factors that ultimately dictate the length of our lives and the quality of our lives. And bringing a personalized approach to that, bringing an approach that fits, to your life. And so with TXV now, what I have the opportunity is at Future, I'm able to collaborate with a lot of different founders. Now at TXV, I can actually go and help us identify who are the great founders, who are the great companies that are going to bring this sort of N=1 approach, that are going to start to allow people to have the access to live longer lives, healthier lives, better quality lives. And now we can invest into those companies. But more than that, because we're building a portfolio in the human performance space, we can invest in companies that, like, when we bring them together into sort of our ecosphere, these companies can all help one another. Like, we're all on this same mission. And, I think that's the biggest thing. And one of the things I love about you and everything you're doing, and especially Apex Optimizers, is there's a realization that I think people have to have, is like, in the human performance space in particular, and health, and healthcare, nobody's going to solve this problem alone. And I think traditionally in like startups and all that, it's always been like a zero-sum game. Like, if you're even remotely in my space, I want to do whatever I can to, like, death to my competitor. But the reality is, for us to help one day hundreds of millions of people, and, like, aspirationally, I mean, there's billions of people on this planet. So, like, why not have that aspiration that we can help billions of people? No one company is going to do that. And so that, it's a long-winded way of saying, like, that's what I'm excited about, is like, we started this conversation talking about, like, I was in search for a bigger platform to help pour into people and create opportunities. It's like, between Future and now TXV, it allows me to sit in such a unique position where I can go and sort of find those people and help those people. And one of the things that's been really cool is, like, because there's a lot of, there's a lot that goes into it on the venture side. So we've had companies who, like, we love, where just either timing's not right or whatever, and we're not able to invest maybe today, and in some cases maybe ever, but we're still going out and let's help those people, because as each of us wins, we all win.
Definitely. I love it. It's more than one solution. It's more than one company, but it's really around a common goal of helping people feel better, longer health span, less chronic disease, less costly healthcare system, and just really impact people, which, as founders in the space, just all kind of combines together. Well, thank you so much for being on and for joining us. But I would love to hear, just how do people find you? How do people find Future?
Yeah. So for Future, our website is future.co. And, if you want to try it out, you can go to future.co/Josh, and that will give you a free first month to just, try it out and see if we can be helpful. We have hundreds of coaches now, and they primarily come from, 70% of our coaches come from having worked with pro Olympic and college athletes. And again, the reason for that is they have a very deep understanding of how to manage your health and performance from a holistic perspective, where, for us, we're focused on obviously fitness, but they're able to help you think about how to build better habits around how you eat, how you sleep, how you manage your stress, obviously without, overstepping our scope. So definitely check us out there. And then for me, I've been trying to be pretty active, especially on Twitter. So you can follow me at J Bonhotal. And I try to share a lot of different, threads and things like that around human performance, and then even just coaching and leadership, and, sort of the startup entrepreneur journey.
I love it. Well, thank you again. And looking forward to continuing to have this conversation.
Likewise. No, it was a pleasure to be on. Thank you.
Awesome.
Madden and Mitchell meet